We're going to move now to Beraishis. And we're looking at the Ramban. The page of the Ramban, it was a scan that was sent out last week or 2 weeks ago. It's the Ramban, page 24. And we now have a disagreement between Rashi and the Ramban as to what the first psukim in the Torah mean. As you recall, Rashi learned for different reasons, particularly diktuk reasons, that the words Beraishis bara Elokim es hashamayim v'es haaretz does not mean the first thing in the beginning. In the beginning, the first thing that God created was heavens and earth. Rashi, first of all, has the simple question. It says in the pasuk, "V'aretz ha'yisasayu v'foyu v'choshech al pnei sahom v'ruach Elokim ha'chefes al pnei hamoyim." It talks about water. Where did water come from? When did God create water? And for other reasons, Rashi says that this is not the Torah is not telling us the order of creation. There were other things that were created before the light. And the first two psukim are introductions to the third pasuk. Beraishis bara Elokim es hashamayim v'es haaretz. In the beginning, when God was in the act of creation of heaven and earth. This is what the place looked like. It was dark, whatever it was. There was a lot of water and there was darkness. And in that setting, God said Yehi Or. Well, what happened before Yehi Or? A whole bunch of things, but we're not going in chronological order. We're starting with the Or. That's how Rashi learns the psukim. There were things created before Vayomer Elokim Yehi Or, such as water, fire. The Torah does not discuss that. The first two psukim are a time reference. We gave the mashal, a person writes a book, he says it was the 5th day of September, it was a dark evening, it was a full moon, and Johnny walked across the street, and suddenly, and the story begins. The first sentences were just a backdrop for the story taking place. Lahavdil, that's what the first two psukim are according to Rashi. In the beginning, when God was in the process of creating heaven and earth, and there was darkness and there was water, and God said, let there be light. That's how Rashi learns. The Ramban says that he disagrees. And he says, in fact, we're getting a chronological order to creation. Of course, there are things created beforehand that we don't know about. That's fine. But in terms of the psukim do go in order. We read page 23. On page 23, the Ramban said, he introduced us to something called hiyuli, which is a Greek word. Hiyuli is some kind of substance which the English Ramban, the Art Scroll Ramban, calls the primary substance, that the Greeks called Yuli. Okay, so we gave a mashal. It's whether it may be an electron, a proton, an atom, or maybe a subparticle, whatever it is. God created two particles from nothing. That's a principle of Jewish belief, that God created the world yesh me'ayin, something from nothing. Of course, the Rishonim talk in great detail about Aristotle, etc., who believe that the world, the Rishonim call it kadmus. Kadmus means kodem. These philosophers believed in kadmus ha'olam. There was a pre-existing world, And in this pre-existing world, God came and took certain things from the world and put together this great world. And the way they learn, the way the philosophers understand the psukim is that God came and found different things, and God is unbelievable. I mean, the philosophers don't deny that. God is absolutely unbelievable. He's an unbelievable craftsman. He took a couple of things that he found, put them together, and made monkeys and tulips and roses and crocodiles and human beings. No one can do such a thing, but they believe in a creation of yesh meyesh, something from something. God found certain things and created the heavens and the earth. We absolutely reject such a shita. God created the world yesh me'ayin. And why do we have to have that shita of yesh me'ayin? We can talk about on a different day. We'll talk about it maybe when we get to Shemos and Yetzias Mitzrayim and the Makos. But it's a fundamental Jewish belief that the Rebbeinu Shalom created the world yesh me'ayin, something from nothing. There was nothing here, and God created it. How did God, according to the Ramban, how did God begin creation? He created two particles. It's a particle that almost has nothing to it. It barely even exists. It's the tiniest of tiniest of tiniest subparticles. But these particles, called Hiyuli, God created two such particles. One is the earth Hiyuli, one is the heaven Hiyuli. And that's where we're up to on page 24, second page of this Ramban. Basically, the Hiyuli, for us, we gave a mashal like Play-Doh. Play-Doh, of course, it's heavy, but we're talking about the tiniest subparticle of Play-Doh. Play-Doh, you can make it into a pizza, then you squeeze it, and then you can make it into a cake, then you squeeze it, you can make it into a fire truck. You can keep on forming different things from the same piece of Play-Doh. If you look at this piece of Play-Doh, in potential, you can form an infinite variety of things out of your Play-Doh. You can make your Play-Doh into a Shabbos challah, Shabbos becha, whatever you want. When you just look at the Play-Doh, it's a substance from which anything can be formed. Think of the Hiyuli that way, except it's a subatomic, who knows what it is, sub. It is the particle that God created from nothing. So now the Ramban says, you should know that the heavens and all that is in them are one primary substance. In other words, the primary substance being the Hiyuli, God created from nothing Hiyuli heaven. And from that Hiyuli heaven, he's going to create all the heavens, whatever heavens mean. It's not the heavens that we see. And it's probably not even the planets, which is still part of this universe. But Shamayim, Shmei Shamayim, the heavens of the heavens of the heavens, about which we know nothing. After the Torah says, Beraishis bor Elokim es hashamayim v'ha'aretz, the Torah then says, v'ha'aretz ha'isasari v'avoyu. We get no further discussion about the Shamayim. The only discussion we have about Shamayim is Beraishis bor Elokim es hashamayim v'ha'aretz v'ha'aretz. Then we focus on the earth meaning our universe. We don't get any further information about this area called Shamayim. So God created this primary substance, this Hiyuli, which had the potential and from which God in fact did form Shamayim. And the land and all that is in it are of one different primary substance. Then the Rebbeinu Shalom created Hiyuli earth or Hiyuli universe. From this subparticle Play-Doh, God was able to form all kinds of different things, the earth, eventually the tulips, eventually crocodiles, human beings, let's leave out for a second. Tulips, roses, crocodiles, apples, oranges, pomegranates, cockroaches, everything from this Hiyuli earth. HaKadosh Baruch Hu bara elu shnehem me'ayin. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created both of these from nothing, yesh me'ayin, ushneim levadam nevroyim. These two things alone were created from nothing. V'hakol nase mehem, and everything else in the universe is made from them. Okay, concept one now in the Ramban. When we talk about, when our Rebbeim told us that God created the world out of nothing, so we look at the 6 days of creation and we say, God created light out of nothing. God created the trees out of nothing. God created the animals out of nothing. God created the birds out of nothing. The Ramban says that's not true. The only two things that God created out of nothing were the two Hiyulis. Once the two Hiyulis were there, and our focus is now only on Hiyuli Earth, once Hiyuli Play-Doh Earth was there, everything is now going to be created from that Hiyuli. The only thing that was created from nothing is that first subparticle called Hiyuli. Everything else that God's going to create is going to come from that Hiyuli. So the only yesh me'ayin, the Ramban says, is Hiyuli. After that, light comes from the Hiyuli. Animals are going to come from the Hiyuli. Birds are going to come from the Hiyuli. Trees are going to come from the Hiyuli. Grass is going to come from the Hiyuli. Everything is created something from something. The grass from Hiyuli, something from something. The only thing that's created something from nothing is Hiyuli from nothing. V'achomer hazeh, shenikra Hiyuli, nikra b'loshen hakodesh tohu. This is beautiful how the Ramban now tracks creation. Remember, the Ramban disagrees with Rashi. Rashi says this is not a chronological order. The Ramban says it is a chronological order. And now the Ramban says this is how you read the psukim. Beraishis bora Elokim, in the very beginning, the first thing that God did, the first thing he created, es hashamayim, he created Hiyuli for shamayim, the es haaretz, and he created the particle to create aretz. Okay, now we have those first two particles that were created something from nothing. Now we continue. V'ha'aretz, and the particle called aretz, ha'isa tohu. It was a tohu particle. Vavohu, and then it became a vohu particle. And the Torah will continue in exact chronological order. Now, what does a tohu particle mean? What does a vohu particle mean? The Ramban's going to explain it. But we're going in absolute chronological order of creation. In the beginning, God created the Hiyuli heaven and the Hiyuli earth, and the Hiyuli earth was tohu, and then the Hiyuli earth became bohu. Ramban. V'achomer hazeh shekaru Hiyuli, nikra b'loshen hakodesh tohu. Now, this substance, which the Greeks called Yuli, is called tohu in Hebrew. It is this first subparticle that the Greeks call Yuli, and in Hebrew it's called Tohu. Why is it called Tohu? So Ramban explains. V'hamila nigzera milashonam b'tohe al harishonis. Tohe. The word Tohu is related to the word Tohe, regret. We find this word in the Gemara, Tohe al harishonos. Someone regrets that which he has done. So the word tohu means sort of to regret. Why is there a regret about the Yuli? When the regret, he regrets his first deeds. Mepnei she'im ba'adam ligza b'shem tohe v'nimlach l'kor b'shem achem. It is called this, it is called tohu, because if a person tries to coin a word for this Yuli, he regrets his choice and changes his mind to call it by another name. for it has not taken on any form that a name should be applicable to it at all. Meaning, the Yuli, the particle, you can't really give it a name while it's still a particle. When the Ribono Shel Olam is looking at this Yuli earth, this particle earth, it has the potential to bring out a crocodile, which God will do. It has the potential to bring out a hawk, which God will do. It has the potential to bring out a pomegranate, which God will do. So if you look at this subparticle just as the particle, and you say, you know what I want to call this? I want to call this pomegranate, because pomegranates are going to come from it. And then, so to speak, I regret my choice. I say, no, I don't want to call it pomegranate. I want to call it crocodile, because I see a crocodile can come from this. And then I think again, I say, no, I don't want to call it crocodile, because I want to call it hawk. I see a hawk is going to come from this. No. I don't want to call it hawk. I want to call it goldfish, because a goldfish is going to come from this. So this particle, which the Greeks call Yuli, in Hebrew is called tohu. Tohu come from the word tohe, regret, because no matter what name you're going to want to give to the subparticle, you're going to change your mind and try to and want to give it a different name, because in there is the potential for zillions of things to be created. And now what are you going to call this? Bird, fish, animal, crocodile, pomegranate, orange. What are you going to call it? Every time you want to give it a name, you can change it and it can become something else. Lahavdil, the Play-Doh. Your son, your daughter, your grandchildren, you buy them the Play-Doh with the machine. They squeeze out pieces, they make a challah. You have a Play-Doh challah. You say, Ruvain, Rachel, beautiful challah. And then they say, Bubby Zaidi, wait a second. They crumble up the challah, and there's no more challah left. They put it back in the machine, and they make a cookie. And they say, Bubby Zaidi, look, we made a cookie from the same Play-Doh. So you say, look, I just called it a challah. Now I'm calling it a cookie. And they say, no. And they squeeze up the Play-Doh again. They put it in the machine, and they make a bicycle. And they say, Zaidi, look at the bicycle. Bubby, look at the bicycle. I say, wow. I first called it a challah. Then I called it a cookie. Now I'm calling it a bicycle. What name can I give this Play-Doh? The answer is, you can't. It's just Play-Doh. It has in it the ability to become so many different things. Every time you call it something, you regret the name you gave it, and you want to call it something else. This is the idea behind Yuli. The Greeks called it Yuli, and this subparticle from which God created from nothing, and from which God is going to form everything in this Oretz universe. Every time you want to give it a name, you regret the name and you want to call it something else. How do you say regret in Hebrew? Tohe. So the Yuli, before it takes on any form, is called Tohu. So how does the pasuk read now? According to the Ramban, Beraishis bar Elokim. In the beginning, the first thing that God created was Es HaShamayim, the Yuli, from which he'll create Shamayim. The Es HaOretz, and the Yuli, that he will create the earth universe from. And he created this Yuli from nothing. The HaOretz, pasuk 2, and the Yuli earth, Haisa was Tohu. It was a Tohu particle. You can't even name it. It's just a particle that has the potential to be so many different things. Stop. HaOretz, Haisa Tohu. The earth particle, Yuli, is in Hebrew called Tohu. You can't give it a name because it's in a state of potential to be anything. Next, what happens to the particle after that? Haaretz Haisa Tohu, Vohu. The particle became Bohu. What does Bohu mean? V'hatzura hanulbeshes lachomer, hayinikra b'loshen hakodesh Bohu. And the form that is taken on by this Yuli substance is called in Hebrew Bohu. Vahamila murkeves. The word is a contraction. Koloma Bohu. Tohu vohu. Vohu. Bohu. What does bohu mean? Bohu. Everything is in it. We're now describing the hiyuli, and we're going to give it a form. We'll soon see the tremendous chiddush, the beautiful chiddush of the Ramban, what the bohu is. But from the state of tohu, where it's a subparticle that you can't give it any name because it's all only potential, it's going to move to the next stage and become a bohu. Everything is in it now. Kamilas lasochol osuchal aso shemachusra avov aleph asohu. Okay, I'm going to skip out 3 lines, and Ramban's just proving that vohu means bohu, even though it's missing a vav. It says vohu. It can be read bohu. Everything is in it. V'zeh she'omer ha'kosav v'nota olav kav tohu v'avnei bohu. It's a pasuk in Yeshaya. The pasuk in Yeshaya says he will stretch out over it a rope line of tohu and stones of bohu. Ki akav hu asher bo yitcham ha'uman machsheves binyono umash yikav v'lasos. In those days, they used we have rulers, we have measuring tapes. They had rope, a measuring rope. And this rope would be used for an engineer, an architect, a builder to measure out his plan, that which he would want to do in the future. He would measure out his plan with a rope. For the rope line is that instrument with which the builder outlines his building plans and what he hopes to accomplish. So the tohu referred to in Yeshayahu, the Yeshayahu says, "V'nota olav kav tohu," and the builder, the architect, spreads out the rope or this line to measure the tohu, the potential. What is it that you want to build? What are you looking forward to do? That you're looking forward to do, to build, is called a kav tohu in Yeshaya. Again, you see the word tohu means that it is something there from which you intend in the future to build something. Nigza min kaveh el Hashem. V'ha'avonim, skipping a line, hein tzuris b'binyan. So the Ramban now tells us three lines from the bottom. Ki hatohu acha ha'efes ve'einenu dover. For tohu is a step beyond nihility, yet it is not a substantive entity. So the tohu is the hiyuli, where from it you can hope and you can have ideas, concepts from which you're going to build from this potential tohu. Bohu already is a new state of affairs where everything is in now. It has been formed. The potential has been fully formed in the tohu. How do you fully form the everything in the tohu? How does it turn into bohu? So Mir Hashem, we'll see that next time. The Ramban's going to explain to us that bohu is the Even Shasiya, the rock on the Harabayas. The Even Shasiya is the bohu of the world. Everything is in the Even Shasiya. It is from the Even Shasiya that the rest of the world was created. The Gemara in Yuma says that the Even Shasiya is the start point and the rest of the world was created around the Evan Shasiyah. So according to the Ramban, we now have, although we haven't seen the Evan Shasiyah Ramban, we'll see that in Yetchem next time. Unlike Rashi, where the Torah is giving me background, in the beginning, when God was creating heaven and earth, this is what the place looked like, and the story begins, Vayomer Elokim Yehi Or. And that's the first act of creation, according to Rashi. The first act of creation that we are told about is light. The Ramban says, no, the pasuk is in chronological order and telling me each stage of creation. In the beginning, God created the Yuli heaven, Yuli earth. The Haaretz and the Yuli earth, Hoisa Tohu, it was in a state of Tohu, you couldn't even name it. If you gave it a name, you would regret the name and change the name to something else because this thing is a piece of Tohu. It's just potential. Anything and everything can be created from it. Vavohu. And then God gave this Yuli particle, he made it into a bohu. Everything is now going to be contained. He gave it a form. And what form did God give this particle that had no form? He made it into an Evan Shasiyah that's on the Har Habayis. And from that Evan Shasiyah that's on the Har Habayis, the rest of the world can now be created. So we have a Seder in creation according to the Ramban Nachmanides, the Hiyuli of earth, Tohu. It's going to become Bohu. And then we'll see what V'choshech al Pnei Sahom B'ruach Elokim means according to the Ramban. But the creation is in an orderly way. We're being described the order according to the Ramban. And we're also being taught that a principle of Jewish faith is the world was created yesh me'ayin, something from nothing. And what does that something from nothing mean according to the Ramban? That God created the Yuli heaven particle, the Yuli earth particle from nothing. After that, everything that God created was yesh me'yesh, something from something. The birds from the Hiyuli earth, the fish from the Hiyuli earth, the light from the Hiyuli earth. The only two yesh me'ayins are Hiyuli particle heaven, Hiyuli particle earth, and then that Hiyuli particle of Tohu becomes a Bohu, and from there creation takes off through the Evan Shasiyah. All Yid that need Yeshua should have Yeshuas. All Yid need Nechama should have Nechamas. All Yid need Bracha should have all the Brachas on the Rebbeinu Shalom. All Yid that need Refuah should have Refuahs. Refuah Shalema to Moshe Zelig ben Rezel. Refuah Shalema to Yosef Chaim ben Shoshana Menucha. Refuah Shalema to Shlomo ben Simcha. Refuah Shalema to all people who are suffering never from the corona, and people who are otherwise ill. They should all have Refuah Shalem B'Sach Shochel Yisrael. Everybody should begin. We work on this. The Refuahs, the Yeshuas, Nechamas, Brachas can only come from the Rebbeinu Shalom through our Hishtadlus. We have to make Hishtadlus. But the results are Biyad Hashem only. How these things will come, through whom they will come, when they will come, is a decision the Rebbeinu Shalom makes. He blesses our Hishtadlus. And when we understand that only the Rebbeinu Shalom is the sovereign, only Rebbeinu Shalom is the supervisor and the authority in the world, and he runs the world, do we do the Gilui Hayichud in our own lives, the Echad Yachad Yuchad that the Ramchal talks about in the Das Tavunos, and through each person doing his own Gilui Hayichud, we together put all our Gilui Hayichuds in this big pot, and we bring it to critical mass. So as the Ramchal explained, Rebbeinu Shalom can send Mashiach today to finish off the Gilui Hayichud, which will then allow us today to go to the Beis HaMikdash Shlishi and to bring Karbonos and to donate the Maktas HaShekel. The Shemamish happened today. Everybody, please take care of yourselves. Do the things you need to do, when you need to do it, how you need to do it, in the safest possible way to do it. We use our Seichel Yosher based upon our medical conditions, etc., to make sure we remain safe, which is a tremendous mitzvah, as we learned about, so that each of us can be healthy, well, and happy to greet Mashiach Tzidkenu, Mamish today, B'mher B'yameinu. Everybody have a wonderful day. Sei gesund.